Welcome, you guys. I think most people here know me, but for those of you who don't, my name is Chloe Ballatori. I'm a relationship and communication expert. I'm a graduate of Princeton University and Pat Allen's Want Institute. Most people know Princeton. Pat Allen is a well-known psychotherapist and relationship expert and the creator of what's known as androgynous semantic realignment, or ASR, which sounds complicated, but I will be explaining more about that tonight. She's kind of famous in the LA Orange County area. So she mentored me. I use tools from, as I said, androgynous semantic realignment, or ASR. I use tools from Eric Berne's transactional analysis, and I also use tools that I've come up with myself because I have been doing this work for about 12 years now. I work with men, I work with women, I work with couples, I work with teenagers. Um, And I've written 3 books on this work. They're all available on Amazon. My first book is really the basics of this work. It's called How to Live, Find Love, and Keep It. My second book is called New Ways of Being: The Pain of Change, which explores a lot of what happens when you start doing this work. If you do the homework, if you do the tools that I teach, you will see changes in your life, and even changes for the better are painful often because the brain rewires itself on pain. So there are 2 kinds of pain: the pain of change and the pain that change needs to take place. And what we aim for is the pain of change. So that's my second book. My third book, Secrets to a Good Marriage. What is love? Because I have been married over 21 years now. It has not been all smooth sailing. So I've been through a lot. With this work saved my marriage 10 years ago or 12 years ago when I started it. So, um, everything that I'm going to be telling you guys, we'll see how this goes. I'm going to be telling you guys is really backed not only by scientific and psychological principles, but also by my own experience and my experience working with clients. I was drawn into this work by a neighbor. I saw a tremendous change in one of my neighbors where she went from being a struggling teenage mom to getting married to the guy of her dreams, started to make $1 million a year. I mean, it was a dramatic change. And when I saw that, I thought, oh, I want to get me some of this. If it's your first night and you don't understand what's happening, that's okay. Um, Sometimes it takes a minute for some of these ideas to absorb. And then beyond that, even once you hear some of these ideas, you have to take the tools into practice and use them yourselves to experience the changes. You experience it on a deeper level once you do that. And then I invite you to come back and share with us. I always love hearing your updates, as you guys know. Um, So that's also another level, is when you share your updates with us. And, that's what we're really building here, is a community. And I want people to feel safe. Okay. So what am I talking about? What is this work? When we talk about successful relationships, what we're really talking about is balance. And that includes the relationship that you have with yourself. Um, And when we talk about balance within ourselves and within relationships, we're talking about the balance between feminine and masculine energy, also known as yin and yang, right? We live in a universe that is based in duality. And one of the dualities that we work with is yin and yang, or feminine and masculine. And again, we see this reflected not only in Chinese philosophy, which is thousands of years old, but also in more recent studies in the 1980s of the Newt's brains, which definitively proved that we all have a masculine side, which is the left brain, which is linear, logical thinking, which is the world of stuff and ideas, which is competitive, conquering, and controlling. Most of us are in our masculine when we're at work because we're doing, we're achieving, we're taking care of things, we're giving, okay? And then we have a right side of the brain, which is feminine or yin. And this is the receiving, the world of feelings, spirituality, creativity, sensuality, sexuality, magic, artistry. Um, Feminine energy is in the world to make it fun, but it's not of the world the way that masculine energy is. It's passive, patient, vulnerable. It's receiving. One is not better than the other. They are two sides of the same coin. And those of us who have a strong masculine side and a strong feminine side, that's what is meant by the word alpha, right? A lot of times people don't understand, and I actually saw an article about this recently, how people misunderstand what alpha means. And in the animal kingdom, you would never follow, animals don't follow unbalanced individuals. Alphas are really about leadership, right? So it doesn't mean you're the bully, and it doesn't mean you're the seducer. It means you're the leader. And what I teach is how to communicate without using bullying or seduction, but to negotiate with love, okay? Now, in our human society, we do have, quote, leaders who are bullying and seductive. But in the animal kingdom, the understanding, the bully is usually not the leader. So it was interesting. I was reading an article that was kind of comparing the two. But regardless, that is really what an alpha is someone who has a strong masculine side and has a strong feminine side and has arguments between their heart and their head. This work is for you, especially because it helps establish a rubric for decision making. Now, excuse me. Oftentimes, when we're talking about problems in relationships, we are talking about childhood trauma. And so I also help people to navigate their childhood trauma and their childhood scripting. Childhood scripting refers to the set of survival conclusions that we make between the ages of 0 and 12. And they're really coping strategies of the moment to get along with the people who own the refrigerator, because human children, as we know, are very dependent. They're not, you know, they're not like, again, they're not like animal children. So, we have to develop these strategies, but the problem is when we take these strategies into our adult life, they usually don't work and in fact end up sabotaging us from getting what we want. So ultimately, this work is all about getting what you want and understanding how to do that without sabotaging yourself. A lot of times, because of these scripts, we have misunderstandings. We think that we have made existential, conclusions that are based on existential truths, but they're actually not. And they cloud our judgment. Most scripts are negative. And this is true, if you've had trauma with a big T or a small t, it's kind of how people have been talking about it lately. But most people have had some degree of childhood trauma. And so part of understanding your life in relationships is understanding what that trauma was, is, and how it's operating currently in your life in terms of your scripts. So that's my spiel. I teach this work a few times a year right now. We're doing module 1 and module 2. I put those links in the chat if you are interested. I'll put that in again, but I probably won't be teaching again until next year. But that's also a good way, in addition to having private sessions, to learn more about this work. And I love doing these groups because we end up really learning a lot from each other, which is nice. Okay, so now I'm going to take your guys' questions, and I also want to hear your updates. You can raise your hand or you can put something in the chat. Whatever you want. Mhm. No questions? No updates? Everybody has what they want? Let's see. Okay. Okay, well, it really can be really about anything. Well, if you're here tonight, I'm thinking that you must have, here you go. Hi, Lee.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm pretty good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How can I help you? What's
Well,
happening?
I was hoping to give other people a chance to start, but when saying anything, the
Yeah,
virtual
you open it up.
initiate. Um, let's see. I'm doing my homework for the module, enjoying the module very much.
Yay, I'm so
Um,
glad.
it's very helpful. Um, looking forward to the coming weeks of it. Um, trying to think here. This does not, so I'm sorry, I'm choking up. This does not necessarily pertain to me, but I was wondering if you could touch on, this is just an abstract question. I'm just curious to hear your
Mhm.
thoughts on. What about when I know there are plenty of people out there. One time you even mentioned um, affairs, married people who have affairs, and what's your take on that? I mean, this is totally abstract. It does not apply to me in this moment, but I was just curious, like, what's the general prevailing thing when, let's say, there's someone that's married and another person that's not married, and the whole, like, if they get into like a cheating situation or something, I mean, is temptation something that, I mean, I'm sure millions of people deal with it, but uh, is it is it acceptable? Is it frowned upon? Is it something, if it's consensual, it's okay? I mean, you're talking about a marriage, you're talking about a commitment, you're talking about two people that have taken a vow, and you know, and it can lead to divorce and all these other things. It's happened to family members, people I know in my family that have been cheated on and lost marriages because of it. And so, I mean, I'm just curious, like, what's, as a professional, as
Mhm.
a very, I think I consider you to be very knowledgeable in relationships. And what's your take on the whole affair cheating thing when you're married, or having
Um,
having trouble in a marriage? I don't know. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on it. And if someone is approached or goes into that sort of scenario, I mean, what's your perspective on it, Chloe? Thank you. Thank you very much.
okay. So, um, cheating is relatively common. Um, Statistics say that at least 50% of marriages have experienced issues of infidelity. Typically, women are more willing to forgive infidelity than men are. Um, it really depends on what your agreements are and what's happening. I mean, look, a lot of my clients won't date married men. Even if they're separated, they won't date a married man because that man is already in a commitment with somebody else, right? And you just never know they're going to get back together or what's going to happen. But that said, I've had clients who have have dated married men. I had a client who dated a man who was almost at the end completed his divorce. Um, he ended up cheating on her, but she accepted it and they moved on from it. And as far as I know, it hasn't happened again. So, it's pretty serious when it happens in a marriage. Some women are willing to turn a blind eye to it. I like I said, it's more rare that men are. So, as the single person, you're going into a situation you don't really have an obligation to respect the other person's commitment, right? But I think it does reflect on the person. So oftentimes what happens is, people who go into affairs, sometimes they have the fantasy that they're going to, you know, be with the person ultimately, that their marriage will end or their marriage will break up. And sometimes that does happen, but a lot of times, even if that happens, because of the way that the relationship started, which was based in deception and shrouded, um, those relationships often founder because there's no trust there. Look, everybody can be a jerk. Everybody can, is susceptible to cheating. It's not like, obviously more people do it than some people are more prone to it than others, obviously. Um, a lot of times it happens out of it's a kind of addiction or compulsive behavior that people do, to make themselves feel better when they're unhappy. So even if they're married, they will, reach out for it in hard times as you would for alcohol or food or any other addiction.
Right.
Sometimes people are willing to excuse certain kinds of infidelity, like if it's with a prostitute or it's just one night. Whereas in my experience, infidelity that lasts over longer periods of time is harder to forgive and also reflects, again, the ability of that person to deceive and to keep a secret, right? You don't necessarily want to be in an intimate relationship with somebody who is adept at living two lives, for example.
Mhm.
So, there's a lot of warning signals there. If I were just to say off the top of my head, should you enter into affair? No, I think it's better to address the problems that you're having, of course, and then make a decision. Usually affairs are entered into like impulsively or compulsively, and they hurt your integrity, or the person who's having the affair is almost more affected than the person that is had the affair on in some cases, because you really let yourself down and your commitments. Remember, we've talked about this in the module before. You only know how much you love yourself or anyone else by the commitments you're willing to make and keep. And ultimately, you've made a marriage so commitment to somebody. And so when you fail to do that, you're also letting yourself down. Now, I will say I've seen, like in the example that I used earlier, affairs or certainly short lived dalliances have the effect of sort of reinvigorating or at least getting the attention of the both people in the relationship so that problems can be addressed if they're in the relationship or if they're
Mhm.
problems that are individual, whatever they are. And so a affair sometimes can serve a purpose in that way, in the sense that it can be kind of a wake up call. But it's dangerous territory, um, and
Great.
people go into it thinking that, it'll just be this lighthearted thing, and it almost never is. That's what I will say.
Interesting. Well, thanks. That's a very good answer. And I'm curious mostly from a psychological standpoint, it just kind of it's crossed my mind a few times about that realm and why they do it and what's going on in everyone's heads. Why, if people have made a choice to be married and they're committed, why would they even consider, you know, uh, throwing away something special that they've worked hard to build and a family and all that? And it's like I said, mostly psychological reasons. I'm a deep thinker, and it's really interesting to me. It's a very good answer. I appreciate the your take on that. Thank you.
You are
That's
so welcome.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough when you're in a long relationship, the romantic projection ends after 3 years. So that's when you really start to, that's when the infatuation stage ends. And that's really when you start to get to know each other. And a lot of people have a hard time saying goodbye to that infatuation stage because you know how it is when you first fall in love with somebody. It's like you have that spring in your step and you're suddenly, the sky looks bluer and the sun's shining brighter and everything seems to be going your way. It's a real high for a while. And so it's often hard for people to give that up. I had a client once who just wanted to get into relationships and do like the first 3 months, because that was the biggest dopamine rush. Now, I will say she is currently in like a 6-year relationship. So she did move past that. But for a while, that was all she wanted. And so that's what I helped her with. Okay. Well, good question. Um, does anybody else have a question about relationships or communication? You can really ask about almost anything these tools will apply. Like I said, my specialty is dating and relationships, but a lot of people come to me about their family problems or work problems. Everyone's so quiet tonight. Hi, Helen.
Hi, Chloe.
How are you?
I'm hanging in there.
Yeah. How's it going? Tell me, how can I help you?
Well, I think I'm also like Lee, and I have these, you know, episodes of just deep thinking and very just questioning things. And like, I think what I'm realizing at this late stage in the game, I'm 48, and I'm just, I'm
Some people
thinking
don't
that
get it till their deathbed and not even then.
I know, I hope that's not me, but I think I'm realizing that my expectations and like my standards for like integrity and ethics and morals and values are just maybe unrealistic. And when I take a hard look at everyone that I know I'm close to, and people even who are married, um, cousins, friends, there's we're all just so messed up.
Yeah.
We all have serious character flaws in one way or another.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
and
most of us are fixers.
most of us are pretty selfish creatures. And I've honestly never met a man that has the level of integrity that I think I'm looking for. Like, there's always some level of deceit or lying, or like they need attention, and they'll just do what they have to do to get it from anyone, and then they'll lie about it. And I'm just at a point where, is it realistic for me to think that I can find someone with these values and this level of integrity? I mean, because we're all just so flawed in one way or another.
Yes, we are
Maybe.
all flawed. So what you look for is really somebody who's teachable, who's open to new ways of being. Because yeah, you're right. We're all fucked up monsters in a way, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but look, that's kind of what I love about this work and these tools is like it gives you a rubric to sort of help somebody along, and help yourself along. And yeah, look, a lot of people come to me and with that same statement and they're like, why is it so bad down here? Why is it so hard? Like, why are there so many people? Or, part of it is the scripting, but part of it is, you have to have something to work against.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot to work against here. But absolutely, I have hope for you. there's a lid for every pot. I
The
mean,
the teachable ones, I
yes,
still I can't find them.
you will though. You're just starting to wake up to this stuff, and you're just starting to see the difference between the people you've been choosing and looking at the kind of people you want to choose now going forward, right?
True.
And you had that dilemma with that guy, and then you used the tools on him, and that made things very clear very quickly.
And by the way, he's
Yeah.
like, now he wants to be back all in. Like, are we back together? And I'm just like really taking a deep breath and pausing, and um because I don't,
We got to put him through his paces.
yes.
We
And
got to
he hasn't,
negotiate what that would look like.
yes. So I'm not like, I don't know how to respond. So I'm just not responding and, immediately. And I'm just really looking back at my notes with you. I'm like, I don't know if this person is teachable. So
Right.
I'm still trying to evaluate that. And
Right.
I won't let myself go back in without knowing he wants to put the work in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I always, when I work with couples I always use this worksheet, which is the list of relationship contract items, and I can send it to you. I don't know if you'll be able to use it with him directly, but it'll get you thinking in like the right direction.
okay.
Because there's like 4 basic areas of things that you need to think about negotiating. I don't know if that'll all happen at once, or if you'll need my help with it, or you can handle it, or whatever it is. But, in general, you want to start looking at the commitments he's willing to make and keep.
Yes, and that's the big question. And I do think I would like to have like your
Would like.
help.
Do you want or would like?
I want your help.
Okay,
I will not jump back in with him unless we have guidance and help from an expert.
good,
And that's where I'm holding my ground.
good, excellent. Okay, so if I forget, you can shoot me an email, but I'll try to remember to send that to you.
Okay, thank you.
You are so welcome. And I'm glad you're being cautious. And look, either this guy's going to work out, and this guy's going to be, and this relationship is going to be a level up, or it's not going to work out with this guy, and the next guy you meet will be a level up. And I can tell you, I can't tell you when it will happen, but I see it happening all the time when for the last 12 years doing this work. I see it happening all the time. All the time.
And I am starting to read your second book because I couldn't attend the module 2, but I'm definitely reading the book. So
Okay, good. Yeah, next
yeah.
time. I'll be offering again in the new year. I'll be starting a new.
Thank you, Chloe.
You are so welcome. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Okay. Does anybody else have a question? Or you guys can also ask questions about other people's work too, if that is stimulating ideas for you. There he is. Hi, Brett.
How's it going, Chloe?
Good. Good to hear you. How can I help you?
Right. Well, I wanted to, you know, ask a follow-on question to, well, kind of lead and Helen is kind of a theme, but
Yeah.
I've
Oh,
been,
isn't that magical? Like there's
uh,
always ends up being a theme. I love that.
yeah. And I've been thinking recently, in fact, after the whole borderline debacle, I had to go into therapy, and she asked me a point blank question. She was like, "Okay, well, you made an exception for her, and blah, blah blah." So in other words, I compromised my values or my standards, my integrity, right?
Right. You kind of went against yourself.
And my gut instinct and blah blah blah, and there's all kinds of reasons, vulnerability reasons, that were not existent previously in my life. I think I mentioned that 2 times I had met people like this, but got them out of my life very quickly because you saw the signs, blah blah blah, right?
Right. But COVID was extenuating circumstances, and a lot
Yeah.
of people
And
got into relationships that they then got out of.
right. And there was some other stuff too, but I don't want to make excuses for myself, because she also mentioned, and this is kind of where the question comes from, sort of like having childhood issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then later in life, and she was like, well, a, a non-traumatized person, a healthy person, would not compromise their own values, their own integrity, their own standards. And so I've really been thinking a lot about that,
Mm-hmm.
and looking over examples in which other times in my life in which I have, you know, done that,
Right.
negotiated with my own self, negotiated with life, made excuses for this, that, or the other, or for life, or for people, or
Mm-hmm.
for myself. So yeah, what are your thoughts about trauma, childhood trauma,
Well, yeah.
influencing the stability of a person's integrity? That's
Okay. So one of the things that happens when we're kids is that because we're dependent, we sometimes have to sacrifice part of our authenticity to attach to our parents so we can get taken care of. And then when we grow up, we need to reclaim that piece, or it's going to show up in our most intimate relationships first and cause us trouble. So one of the things that a lot of people have from childhood trauma is acceptance of bad behavior, meaning even if a person's kind of treating them shitty, they think that, oh, I can convince them into liking me. Not only do they think they can convince you them into liking you, but they also think that this is a worthwhile endeavor, right? That convincing somebody to like you is something that you have to do. Um, and one of the things that people who don't have a lot of childhood trauma kind of know instinctively is if someone's treating you shitty, you walk away. You don't engage. You don't, you know,
there
so
is no negotiation with that.
right. But when we have something that hits one of our scripts like that, there's a certain energy of a compulsive behavior where even if you've aware of the trauma or if you've healed somewhat, there's like that chemistry of like wanting to do it sometimes anyways, right? Because the pull of the familiar, the repetition compulsion, is so strong. So, and once you become aware of that, you can literally feel it sometimes. Even, I mean, I've been doing this work for a while, and even I feel sometimes the pull to do something self-destructive just because of the familiarity of it. And so, whatever that may be, whether it be to engage in a fight with trolls or road rage or, but the root of it being that
You
you're
mean bridge trolls?
No, but in my line of work, I face trolls,
Okay. Oh,
online
you mean
trolls.
like online trolls?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay, yeah, yeah. I was
And you
trying to
have to
make a
rise
joke,
above
but
it, and you have to
yeah.
not engage, right? Um, but occasionally I'm still tempted. So, I've learned a lot, and I, for the most part, don't engage with, somebody said something to me once about like, oh, well, you should try to convince people, blah, 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 like in a professional way. Well, with your work, you could convince. I'm like, I'm not doing that. People either are on the page with this work or they're not. I'm not going out to convince people to like this work, to like me as a person, none of it. I put myself out there And if people are interested, great. And if they're not interested, fine. And if they want to be assholes, I walk away. You know what I'm saying? Like my kids know this. My daughter, if someone treats her crappy, she's done. Like there's no drama there, like there is for so many other people. So I did succeed in breaking the cycle.
I
And
noticed the same thing with my son.
yeah.
And it took a little while for him to learn, but now at this point he's kind of a no BS, like got his head screwed on tight.
Right. Right. And then
Yeah.
he just doesn't have to deal with a lot of the drama that a lot of other kids have and teenagers are dealing with. So does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
Yes. However, I'm wondering if there's like one step further to it too, and that is that like I get that in terms like what you're saying in terms of tolerating people's bad behavior, but one particular thing about borderlines, as is that for many months they actually appear as the most normal, special, charismatic, perfect partner that you like wish
Yes,
fulfillment.
yes.
And
And
that's
no real person can replace that.
yeah.
No, a regular
And
person isn't going to be acting like that.
yeah, and so it's like part of the disorder, and so you get reeled in and everything, and then once the mask falls off, and it's progressive, it's slow, and the slow
Yeah,
dawning that you
but it is and it isn't, because I bet you're looking back and you're seeing the moments when you knew something was wrong and you
Mhm.
chose to overlook it.
You chose to negotiate with it,
Right.
yes.
And
And
so
and
that's what we work on a lot, is that's why it's all about respecting your own thoughts and cherishing your own feelings, because that brings awareness to your gut instincts and to your intuition. And so if you have enough awareness about that, it will become impossible to ignore those things. And I've often said, women who have escaped serial killers, because of course serial killers, which are not common, don't get all scared, but serial killers aren't as common as are, in the media and all that. But basically, they don't get everyone, right? But the women who have escaped are the ones who had a gut instinct that something was off. And maybe it's not explainable. You feel it in your body, especially women are out real alpha men. You feel it, you might feel it in your stomach or you feel it in your chest. You just know your skin might crawl. I've walked into a room before, exchanged a glance with a man and I got goosebumps, right? It's just bad vibes. So if you're sensitive and you can bring awareness to that, a lot of us have tamped down those feelings because they're inconvenient, or we've learned that they will upset other people. But that's when we really are discounting ourselves. So part of the process is stopping discounting ourselves so much.
discounting ourselves and sort of like where I'm heading with the next step of like, even beyond the familiarity, there's almost this I'm gonna call it wish fulfillment because it was a need in childhood, still remains a need, but it doesn't have to stay a need in adulthood. And that is that your core need as a child is that your parents wake up and change.
Wake up and
And
what?
change. And they
Oh.
start behaving differently. And I don't know how if I can say it any more simple, but they just like, does that make sense? That they just wake up, they recognize the hurt that they're causing, the wrong that they're doing, or
Right.
the stuff that they're not doing to intervene, to protect, and et cetera, et cetera. And start behaving differently and start in fact being different. But that never really happens.
Right. And it doesn't happen that much. You shouldn't, I don't advise you to wait around for people to change. When people want to change, it's very obvious and they have to put a lot of effort in.
Yeah.
We'll know. So
Yeah.
you don't have to really, someone's either teachable or they're not teachable. They're either open and they want to work with you and they want to negotiate, and you guys, sometimes somebody is teachable, but you're still not a match. You're not compatible. You don't want the same things, whatever it is. Chemistry, you need chemistry, compatibility, and communication. So, part of it is, trying to get as much alignment as you can get, when you're dating and you're meeting people. You don't get everything, but we've talked about, I mean, if he's 50, if he or she is 51% valuable, you keep them.
So
Now,
yeah, so I guess that was where the question is arising, is like, what,
I mean,
that
if you get 60 or 70% of what you want, that's pretty damn good. Nobody gets everything.
so I guess what you're saying then is the answer to that question of why would you negotiate with somebody and compromise your own values, your own standards, your own integrity? It really is so simple as you're used to doing so. You were taught to do so as a child,
Yeah.
and you grow up still wishing that somebody would behave differently, rather than
And
just
you think you don't
finding
have
someone
other
who
choices.
doesn't behave
Right.
that way in the first place from the get-go.
Right. And just like Helen was saying, you think you don't have other choices, but you do, and you will be surprised by people. I'm
Oh
often
yeah,
surprised by people, especially
yeah.
when you use these tools. Who ends up standing, who ends up rising to the occasion, who does care about your feelings, who does respect your thoughts, who is willing to negotiate with love. You do learn a lot.
Yeah, the
There
most
will
curious.
be people. It won't be all your people. My circle got a lot smaller when I learned this work, but it's tight. I know I can, nobody's 100%, but I know that I can rely for the most part in the people who are in my inner circle. Like, it feels safe, knock on wood. But
Yeah, and the last part of all of this is that looking back, I did before in my life find people that were good, caring, like good matches, and no, I just
well, don't dwell on that.
whether it's, yeah, what I'm saying is I've already experienced it. I know it's like
It's out
possible.
there. Yes. And really,
Yeah, yeah.
it really is. It really is out there for everyone. I want everyone to find their person. That's my goal. I mean, and there's more than one person a lot of times. And, not all relationships last forever, and they're not meant to. But it's wonderful when it does. And there's, I mean, I think everyone in this room knows there's nothing better than when it works.
So punchline, don't beat myself up if I made that cliche mistake.
Absolutely not. You have to make mistakes to learn. And it's totally pointless and mean to beat yourself up about that. You learned something. Use that pain to consolidate your learning and move forward. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone. That's, perfectionism is a fool's errand. Perfectionism is actually a form of self-abuse because it's not attainable. Please don't try to be perfect. Please. It's just a way of hurting yourself and scolding yourself and shaming yourself, because you're always going to fall short. Okay. Thank you for sharing, Brett. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Probably have some time to talk to at least one more person about dating, about relationships, communication, power dynamics, the relationship with self, the modules. What else is here? I also put stuff up usually on Instagram and TikTok every day, little tidbits, because like I said, I like to build the community of people who know this work, because ultimately knowing this work will make changes people's lives. And when people have love in their lives, we're just living in a better place because we right now are living in a very masculinized society that is very work focused and has sacrificed a lot of yin values. I was actually thinking about this today, which was that, we had this long period of time where men were kind of in charge of most of the things, at least in the United States. Let's say, up until feminism in the 1950s, 60s, 70s. And the problem with that was that a lot of men were controlling without cherishing women's feelings, right? And so then feminism came along, and instead of fixing that part of cherishing women's feelings and cherishing yin values in general, right? The environment, nature, free time, good food, health, things that in other countries have been bigger priorities. Instead of doing that, we shifted into making women, oh, okay, you're gonna not cherish my feelings. So now women will be men. We will just take on those responsibilities. And so what's resulted is in a very imbalanced society on a national level. And so we all kind of have to work against that as well. That's called the epi-scripting. Everyone has their childhood script, but then there's a script that is, held by different societies. You may have competing scripts because often, people who live in the US are from other countries. So they have a script from, Southeast Asia, but they also have a script from living in America. And oftentimes those scripts are in conflicts. Those are epi-scripts. But we talk more about that in our module classes. Okay, well, if nobody has any questions, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for coming, you guys. I'll be here next week. I think the following week I will not be here. And then, I'll be doing these meetups up until Thanksgiving this year. And then after that, I'll still be available for privates if you guys are in need. A lot of you know that you can reach out to me with a quick question. If I can answer it, I will. If not, we'll set up a session. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Have a good night.